pairing. Great. I think we're on. So hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Kay Ford. I am the recording secretary for the Indiana Genealogical Society, and we are excited to welcome Nicole LaRue this evening to talk about certification and accreditation of genealogists. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will be watching during Ms. LaRue's presentation, and then I will pass the questions along to her at the end. So I am going to turn over the time to Ms. LaRue. There we go.
All righty. Let me get this pulled up for y'all. Hopefully you can see that all right. All right. So thanks everybody for joining us today. I have to say I'm really excited about being able to talk to you all today. For those that go way back and with the Indiana Genealogical Society, I used to volunteer to coordinate the Once a Hoosier, Always a Hoosier project, but that was, like I said, in the way back years, many years ago. So it's been a long time. It's really nice to be back with you guys. For tonight, I was asked to talk a little bit about my experience earning the AG and CG credentials. And in the United States, when you're talking about genealogical credentialing, these are the two credentials that you're going to be focused on. That is accreditation through ICAPGen, and that's the AG, and certification through the Board for Certification of Genealogists, and that's the CG. The two credentials have a different approach to testing, I think, and they have, at least in my opinion, a slightly different focus. So we're going to take kind of a quick and dirty look at the two credentials and kind of my experience with earning both of them. And hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have as well. I do need to add a little disclaimer here to say that I'm not here speaking to you all for ICAPGen or BCG. I'm just here with my own interpretations and opinions and not necessarily those of the credentialing bodies. And that's the fine print on that. So we're going to start with accreditation. To obtain the accredited genealogist credential, or the AG, testing is conducted through the International Commission for the Accreditation of Professional Genealogists. So that's where you get the ICAPGen. And probably the best advice I can give you, if you're only going to remember one thing about ICAPGen and earning the AG, it is my telling you, check out the guide that they have on their website. It's a PDF and it's called Guide to Applying for an Accredited Genealogist Credential. Like I said, you can find and download the PDF on the ICAPGen website. You just go to their homepage and at the top, you'll see the little Become Accredited button. You can click on that, scroll down to step 1, and you'll see this little button here where it says Access Guide. And that's what they mean is this is the PDF, and that's where how you can download it to your own computer for later reference. And inside, you're going to find a full description of the accreditation process, beginning with what they call the readiness assessment. The readiness assessment is, like I said, on the ICAPGen website. And it's really just a form meant for you to tell ICAPGen whether you've put in the research hours to help determine whether you're ready to start the process of accreditation. Now, for reference, ICAPGen suggests that you might be ready if you have a minimum of 1,000 hours of genealogical research, experience, and education. And then more than half of those hours should be in a specialized geographic region. So this region will be your testing region throughout the accreditation process. So for example, your level 1 project should be focused in this area. Your level 2 written exam will be on records and research in this area. And then the level 3 project will be a research project with a research objective that's based in this area. You specify the region that you are choosing to be tested in on this readiness assessment form right at the beginning of the process. And that'll then place you in the right group of test takers for that region. So you really need to understand how the regions are broken up with ICAPGen before you complete this step. So there are testing regions currently for the continental Europe, Latin America, Scandinavia, Britain, Canada, and then of course the US. So this is how the US regions break down. You can see Indiana's in the orange group. This is what they call the Great Lakes region, which includes Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And that map you can pull up on their website. But ICAPGen helps you out even more because for each region, they provide you on the website with this downloadable PDF of the regional resources that you need to be familiar with in order for success in your region. And the resources include things like record groups, repositories, any region-specific methodologies that you might need to know about, and whether there's any language requirements for the region. So this is the first page of the regional resources for the Great Lakes region. Like I said, that's the one that includes Indiana. And notice that the testing regions aren't just the one state. I keep talking about Indiana in conjunction with a bunch of other states. So you are going to need to be comfortable with all of the states in your region. So again, for Great Lakes, that's Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Indiana. I'll tell you also, the testing judges are going to be able to pick up on the weaker spots of your research and your skills. And if they can kind of get a sense that you're weaker in one state or a couple states than the other, they will focus their energy on asking you questions and giving you projects in that location. Don't think that you can know everything there is to know about Indiana and still skate by. They're probably going to find you out. So once you've filled out the readiness assessment and you know what region you believe you're qualified to proceed under, we get to the level 1 project. Now this is a 4-generation narrative. There are, as you can see, this is just one page, but there are quite a few guidelines that you need to follow. So again, you really need to read the application guide very closely. For instance, the most recent person of interest must be listed as a child for the next generation in the project. And that person must have been born on or before 80 years prior to the submission of your project. So if you submit in 2020, the most recent ancestor in your 4-generation project must have been born on or before, what's that, 1940? No, yes, 1940. Also, all 4 generations need to have lived within the same geographic region that you're testing in. That doesn't mean that all 4 generations need to have spent their entire lives in that region, but all 4 must have at least lived in part in the region, and that could be any state in the region. So, for example, my 4 generation project began with my grandfather, who was born in Illinois, and he spent most of his life there. But later on in life, he moved to California, obviously not in the Great Lakes region, but he did live in Illinois. His father and grandfather were both born in Indiana and then moved into Illinois. So we're okay there because that's the same region. And then the earliest generation was actually born in Kentucky, not surprising, moving to Indiana from Kentucky, right? But that's clearly also not part of the Great Lakes region. But he moved to Indiana, and that's where he died later on. So all 4 of these men spent time within the region. So keep that in mind when you're looking for a good family for this project, and make sure that all 4 generations can be documented to have lived in your chosen region, keeping in mind that 80 years or earlier start date that you need, that's really important. Now, in addition to the report, you're also going to need to submit a pedigree chart showing all 4 of those generations. You need to submit family group sheets, source images for your documents, and then a research log. So this is sounding like a lot, and it is, that you need to keep track of. So again, familiarizing yourself with this application guide and the guidelines that tell you what you need to do and what you need to submit can be kind of a helpful way for you to develop a checklist so you don't get lost in all of the documents. So if you pass level 1 with 90% or higher, you can move forward to level 2. And that's actually made up of 2 tests. These tests are done in 1 day, and you can choose to take your test at the Family Search Library in Salt Lake City, if any of you have been there, or you can choose custom testing and take it at a Family Search center, your local center, or an affiliate library. Those are options as well. So the first part is called document interpretation. And what this means is that you're going to be given copies of several documents, and they're going to be taken from repositories or, possibly online in your area. And you're going to be asked to identify what the document is. You're going to have to transcribe parts of it. You're going to create abstracts, and then you're going to create a research plan. And then you're also going to be expected to talk about the kinds of information you might expect to find in certain types of records in the area. And then how do you locate records online for your area? All of that is helpful information that you're going to need to talk about. It's really where you're asked to show that you are familiar with the records in your region and that you have a good understanding of the records in your region. Now, I mentioned a little bit ago that some of the regions have language requirements. If your region does have a language requirement, you can expect to find another document here in this part of the test. Now, for the Great Lakes region, there is a German requirement. So what this means is that we need to be able to handle records that may be written in German handwriting and possibly include some German words that are common for that type of record. That doesn't mean you all have to go out and, become fluent in German before you take the test. It's nothing major like that. The document that I got was a church record, and it was clear that the minister had a German background because his handwriting was in that. I don't know if you're familiar with the German script, but it looked very similar to current Schrift. And there were some words that were pretty common to German church records, words for parents or godparents and witnesses, that kind of thing. It wasn't super difficult, so don't sweat it too much. Just be sure to familiarize yourself with German handwriting a little bit and common vocabulary. There's actually a really good book if you're thinking about testing in a region with a German language requirement. You might want to check out Catherine Schober's book called The Magic of German Church Records. Um, it's really helpful to get you comfortable with both that handwriting, that script, as well as vocabulary words to watch out for in German church records. So once you get past all of that, in case you've forgotten, there is a second test. And this test is made up of lots and lots and lots and lots of questions on records and research in your region, as well as some general research and general knowledge questions. There are questions about the geography of your region, historical context, research methodology, records accessibility in the region, and locations where you can find records repositories and what they have there, both online and offline. All of that appears in this test section. And then in the more general question category, you'll see things like, naturalization, just things that are not super specific about the region, but just in general, do you know about these things? It is a lot of questions and it covers a lot of ground, which for me sounded scary. I've never been great at test taking. I never do well test taking. I overthink it and I just bomb every test I've ever taken. It's not that bad. And here's why. There is a little bit of a fallback here because it's an open book test. And what that means is you are able to use any notes or books that you have, as well as the internet. Now, here's the caveat. These exams are timed, so you will not have enough time to sit there and look up answers for every single question, not by a long shot. You need to come prepared and then bring your notes and whatever you've prepared to help you. And if you blank on something, you can look that up, but you do need to prepare. Just because it's open book, you can't really hang on that too hard. Otherwise, you won't finish the test. Okay, so as with level 1, you must pass the level 2 exams with 90% or higher in order to move on to level 3. Level 3 is a 4-hour research project. And as with level 2, you can take the test either at the Family Search Library or an affiliate library or your local Family History Center, whichever works best for you. And what's going to happen is you'll be provided with a research objective, and you are expected to produce basically a client report. So you're going to, at the end of the project, you'll have the client report, you'll have the research log, pedigree chart, family group sheets, source images, and you have to do all of this within the testing time. You are timed like the level 2 projects. You have 4 hours to do this one. And also you need to keep in mind that the report needs to have all of the required components of a client report. So you need to be sure you have things like the summary, the conclusion, a section on background research if you're provided with any, time restrictions, any limitations on the research, suggestions for future research, all of the things that we include in client reports in our day-to-day work anyway needs to be in this project, in your level 3 project. It's actually very similar to what you produce for level 1, except this time you have to do it within the testing time and at the testing location. So essentially, you're being tested here on your efficiency as a professional, as well as everything else. So those are the 3 levels. And you may think you can take a breath now, but oh no, because now you need to sit in front of a review panel, and they're going to grill you even more about your knowledge of the research and records in your region. And maybe that's not entirely true. Maybe grill is not the best word, but it kind of felt that way to me. It was a little intimidating to me. But it really wasn't bad at all. But this is the final obstacle that you've got to get through to be awarded with your AG. So it is important. The panel is made up of a few AGs accredited in your region, and they're going to ask you questions about all 3 levels of your projects and testing. And at the end of the review, the panel will determine whether to award you the credential. It's pretty straightforward. There were 3 AGs on my review panel, and questions ranged from further inquiries from the general knowledge section of my testing to there was a question about how I felt about the German handwriting document that I had. There were also questions about my level 1 project, and my accreditation testing and all of that happened in the middle of COVID. So I had actually submitted my level 1 project before COVID, and then everything shut down, and that included ICAPGen. Everything was suspended, everything was put on hold. And so I had already finished my level 1 project maybe a year and a half before COVID hit. And at the time, we had a time restriction. I believe it was once you pass level 1, you had 2 years, I think, to go through level 2. So I was already at the end of my time limit between level 1 and level 2 when COVID hit, and everything was shut down for 2 years. So by the time I got to the oral review panel, it had been a long time since I had done my level 1 project. And fortunately, I had some friends who were like, yeah, your panel can ask you questions about level 1, so you might want to read that again just to refresh your memory. And thank goodness I did, because they did ask questions about that however many years later at the panel. So that's something to keep in mind. Don't think that you can finish your level 1 and pass it and move on and just set that aside and you're done with that and you're not going to have to deal with it again, because it will come up again. So when the panel is finished asking you their questions, what's going to happen is they'll excuse themselves to deliberate, and whether you're doing it in person or through Zoom. They'll either go to another room in person or they'll put you in a breakout room in Zoom while they talk about things. And when they return or they bring you back, they'll simply let you know whether you've passed and you are now an AG, or they'll give you further projects or questions to answer before you can move forward. And that's it. So now we're going to move on to the second credential we're going to be talking about today. This is the Certified Genealogist credential. This is awarded by the Board for Certification of Genealogists. And right up front, I'm going to say I see a lot of confusion on this one from people who have earned a certificate from an institute or a workshop. The courses through Boston University, they offer a certificate. This is not the same thing. So if you go through one of those programs, that's not That's not akin to certification from BCG. These are separate things. Like ICAPGen, BCG has a great website, and they've got a downloadable application guide available for you there. And before you make another move towards certification, you again really want to take a look at their guide to better understand whether you're ready and what you need to complete the certification process. When you open the application guide, you're going to see a pretty simple explanation of the process here. It looks like there's just two steps to certification. And the first is what's called a preliminary application, and it is very similar to the readiness assessment, although much less specific. Again, the current form is available for download on BCG's website. This is what it looks like at this point in time. At the top, you just enter your contact information, and at the bottom, you initial it, agreeing that you've read the guide, you've paid, all of that administrative stuff. So that's pretty easy to do. It's a pretty easy thing to check off your list. But there's one bit here in the middle that you're going to want to pay particular attention to. Here, they're asking you for a geographic area and time period from which you would like BCG to pull a supplied document assignment. And you may be thinking back to ICAPGen's geographic testing regions, but this is not the same thing. This is something different. Unlike ICAPGen, the certified genealogist credential is not geographically specific. So whereas you might receive your AG in the Great Lakes region, your CG does not distinguish among locations. What BCG is asking for here then is the area and time period in which you would like to be tested in your document work only. And this brings us back to that second step in the process, and that's the portfolio. And the portfolio is your chance to show what you know and that you know what you're doing. Now, here's really the meat of the BCG process. When we talk about the portfolio, this is what we mean. There's basically 6 components here that you need to include. And the first is just a signed code of ethics. The executive director will send this to you once they've received your preliminary application, and all you have to do is read it, sign it. It's pretty easy to do. You can cross it off the list. Next is the development activities component. And for this, you just need to lay out any education, work experience, genealogical memberships even, like your membership in IGS. Anything like that to show what you've been doing to build and grow your skills and to get to the point where you feel you're ready to submit a portfolio. So I wanted to show you all what that would look like, but unfortunately for my initial portfolio, what was required back then was more of a resume. So instead, this is part of my development activities document for my last renewal. You have to renew the credential every 5 years. Actually, you have to renew both credentials, the AG and the CG, you renew every 5 years. So you can see here, I've got memberships, I've got education listed here, conferences that I attended, conferences where I spoke, study groups. If you're familiar with the ProGen study groups, that would be a great one to add here. And then any lectures or webinars that you attend or speak at, anything like that. And then at the end, I also had sections for institutes as well as work experience and even any relevant books that I read. Whatever you think will show the judges that you've been building up your genealogical skills and education, put it into this document. So the third component of the portfolio is where we said that geographic location and time period comes into play. For your document work, BCG is going to supply you with a document to transcribe, abstract, analyze, and then use to build a research plan. When that preliminary application form asks you for a geographic location and time period, this is just so that the office, the BCG office, knows what document to give you. If you request a document from post-Civil War Alabama, that's what you should expect to receive, not a document from, colonial Massachusetts. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't include work samples from other areas, antebellum Virginia, wherever, in your portfolio. If you feel comfortable enough, you can provide your work samples from the four corners of the globe. It's just that they want to see you work with a specific document in an area that you feel comfortable in so that they can see your kind of day-to-day skills at work. And now we get to the final three components. These are the larger written work samples. So first we have the research report. This is a sample of your work that's done for another person. Now there are some guidelines here. This cannot be a member of your family, your nuclear family, but it can be something that you've done for a friend or a neighbor or whomever. And it can be something that you did for free. It doesn't have to be for pay work. Next, we have the case study. And this is a work sample similar to what you might see in a published journal like the National Genealogical Society Quarterly. And I'm going to make a little recommendation here. If you are not a member of NGS and you don't receive this publication, I would highly, highly recommend that you do so. Or at least, find a library with a subscription and start reading. Because published case studies are really helpful when you're trying to learn about methodologies, sources, all of that. Seeing how people go about solving problems, whether in the region you're working in or not, this can help you figure out how to solve your own genealogical problems by offering you ideas, options, things to try. They are also really, really helpful when they're used kind of as almost as models for how to write up your own cases, your own proof arguments, because that's what these case studies are. For example, how do you explain how you know that Rupert and Rupertina are Mary's parents? Read the case studies. They'll be a great help to you. And one thing that you need to keep in mind when you're considering which project to use for this case study component is that the application guide requires that your case study be a case using conflicting, indirect, or negative evidence. And what that means is that you cannot use a case where the document provides you with a simple, direct answer to your question and you haven't gotten anything or found anything else that conflicts with that. So if you have a death certificate and a birth certificate that names Rupertina's parents and those sources agree, you can't submit that as your case study for your portfolio. You must show that you understand how to use conflicting, indirect, and negative evidence for this component of your portfolio. And you can learn more about those types of evidence and how to present them in a written format by, again, reading the case study. So it's really important to familiarize yourself with those published cases. And finally, we have the Kinship Determination Project. This is often referred to as the KDP, so you might have heard people talk about that. It's basically a 3-generation project, similar to ICAPGen's 4-generation project, for level 1, that is. And you just write it up as a genealogy or a lineage. You can put it in an ascending or descending format, but you must include proofs of relationships for that project. Now, all of these components are held together by the genealogical standards, and you can find them in a book that's conveniently enough called Genealogy Standards. It's hard to forget. We are currently on the 2nd edition revised, so make sure you have the most up-to-date version. But I really cannot stress enough how important this book is to have as a reference, whether you decide to go for a CG or an AG or not, because the standards here are exactly that. They are the accepted standards for our field. These are the practices which we all kind of strive to meet in our day-to-day work, credentials aside. So I really can't stress it enough. Get it, read it, learn it, and then use it. If you are considering trying to get the CG credential, you really have kind of an extra need of a copy of the standards book because your portfolio will be judged using rubrics that are very closely aligned to these standards. You can find the rubrics again on BCG's website, and you should have them close at hand as you're going through your own portfolio, because this will tell you exactly what the judges are going to be looking for in your work samples. So this is a little snippet from the current rubrics. This is just page 1, and it looks like it's covering the development activities and just the start of the document work. But you can see that at each point, for each issue that the judges are going to review, there are standards listed that correspond to that issue. So again, if you have the rubrics and you have the standards book right in front of you, you can go through your work samples just rubric by rubric and check yourself. Make sure you've done what the rubrics say, what the standards say. And if you haven't, you can do that because you know exactly what they're going to be looking for. Things that aren't there, you're going to get marked down. Partially meets, does not meet standards. Just use the two together, check yourself, go through your work samples, and make sure that you have these things. It'll help you out. And that's about it for the 2 processes. These are the steps for each of them. And as we saw, there are some similarities, things like the narrative genealogy requirement, for example. And there's some differences too. So a question people ask a lot is, which one is right for me? And obviously, I can't answer that. I don't know what would be right for you. You may find that one works better for you than another, or maybe that you want to try for both. Now, for me, I grew up in Illinois, right near the Indiana border. I had a lot of friends over the Indiana border. So I started doing work in that area, a lot of Midwest work. So having that special geographic designation from the AG in the Great Lakes region was a way to show my expertise in that area. But realistically, my work now is not really geographic specific in the same way, especially since for a long time I was a military spouse and we moved to a new place every 3 to 4 years So I would move to a place, I would start to learn about it, start to get into the records and kind of figure things out. And then it would be time to pick up and move to another place, and I'd have to start the whole thing all over again. So I ended up with a lot of knowledge of a lot of places. Um, so I learned kind of how to be a genealogist without a lot of the tools that we have now, a lot of the access that we have now. Um, and so, being able to work on all kinds of projects and not be, I guess, geographically focused was important to me. And even today, my day job is with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and I have to take projects on from all over the country every day. So having that CG, I think, it kind of shows that general methodology skill, in addition to, having a geographic specialty. So it's really just a matter of taking a look at your own goals and your own skills and deciding what's best for you. Unless, you could be just one of those people that wants to do it all and go get it. That's awesome. No matter which option you choose, one or both or none, ICAPGen and BCG do have some tools to help you figure things out along the way. So for those looking into accreditation, ICAPGen has a YouTube channel with videos on several different points of the testing process. And these videos are presented by AGs, and they talk about kind of each level of testing and how to prepare. But if you're not quite ready to start the process, they also have videos on related topics that aren't strictly part of the testing. And you can find videos here in this screenshot. There's some about personal accreditation journeys, transcriptions, locality guides, and there's lots of others. So you can check all of those out again on their YouTube page. ICAPGen also has study groups for those that are ready to get started. There's one for the level 1, and then there's another one for level 2 and level 3. The groups are led by AGs. They are held virtually, and then they take place over the course of several weeks. The level 2 and 3 study group I found to be extra helpful, because it was a really good way to practice some of the timed research, as well as we started our resource guide for ourselves. It was essentially a document that would be our notes for that written test. And we did that in the study group. And then also, because they are led by AGs, it's a really good way to get some feedback, to ask some questions and get some answers. So yeah, I would highly recommend it, at least the level 2 and level 3 study group. On the BCG side of things, they do not have their own study groups for those that are thinking about the portfolio process, but they do have many resources out there for you. The most easily accessible are files and articles that are available on their website. These include work samples and articles. And, sometimes I think people kind of roll their eyes about that kind of thing, but really the amount of information that's available in some of these documents is really, really invaluable. These resources have been vetted and gone through an approval process before they were placed on the website. So, it's just a matter of you reading them, studying them, and then starting to practice incorporating some of these skills into your own work as you go along. In addition to the resources on the website, BCG has a couple of other helpful resources that begin once you submit your preliminary application and you're considered on the clock. The first is the BCG newsletter. This is called On Board, and you can purchase a subscription to this newsletter for $15 at any time. But once you've submitted your preliminary application and, like I said, you're on the clock, you receive the newsletter for free. It's published 3 times a year, so you can take advantage of the articles while you are preparing your portfolio. And that's a really great kind of bonus. It's a really great help because a lot of the articles in the newsletter are largely focused on standards, methodology, and many of the articles are written by trustees. Some are written by judges, although the judges are anonymous, so you don't know that they're judges, but some of the people that write are. And then longtime certified associates. So this is one that I did last year on using marks and signatures to help prove cases of identity. And actually the case study for this discussion was an Indiana guy. So the second helpful resource that BCG offers for those that are seeking to get certified is kind of a help service once you've submitted your preliminary application. And I've said that once you do that, you're considered on the clock. And the reason for that is once you send in your form, you have 1 year to complete and submit your portfolio. So that's why they call it on the clock. The clock is ticking that 1 year. You can extend if you need to. You can ask for an extension. That is a possibility. But when you submit your preliminary application, that 1 year time starts counting. And like I said, during that time, you'll have access to onboard, but you also get access to what's called the action list. This is a private email-based mailing list where BCG trustees will answer general questions about the portfolio process. I'm going to say that one more time. They will answer general questions, okay? They're not going to answer questions about how you can prove that Jane was the daughter of John. But this list is helpful if you have questions about, your interpretation of something in the app guide, or how to submit your images, or something like that. Apart from the website and support for those on the clock, BCG offers an additional resource that many people, I think, might have forgotten about or maybe never heard of in these, post-pandemic times. There are a few remaining in-person genealogy events these days, although nowhere near what we used to have prior to COVID, right? But you can usually find a BCG booth at some of these events, and attendees can sit down and look at a handful of complete, successful portfolios. Probably the best and the biggest place to do this is the National Genealogical Society annual conferences. They're usually the main place for this, but it's also been done at things like institutes like the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy, the SLIG in Utah, or I think it might also have been done at GRIP in Pittsburgh and possibly IGHR as well. But like I said, I know those in-person events are kind of rare now. But if you do get a chance to look at them, definitely take it. You're not going to want to miss the opportunity because it helps you to understand what you need to do if you're able to see examples of how others did it. It's just looking at a full portfolio just kind of gives you a much better idea of what you need to do. But if you can't go to one of these events in person, and I know a lot of people can't these days, remember those documents on BCG's website. You can at least see examples of vetted work there. So now that we've gone through both credentials and the process to obtain them, you may just be thinking, this is not for me. This is not something I want to do, I need to do. Whether you want to be an AG or a CG or neither, the testing process and the credentialing process should probably be something you want to keep in mind as you go along in your own research anyway, because we all get to a point where the research might take you into unfamiliar locations or time periods, or maybe you've just hit a brick wall and you can't crack it and you need some help. We want to be able to find someone who can take our research to the next level and having an understanding of what the professional researcher has been tested on or what they have demonstrated in their work samples in the portfolio or in the testing, can kind of help you better understand what you might expect when you hire a credentialed professional. In other words, these credentials kind of demonstrate that the researcher has produced work that's been judged to meet standards and shows a level of competency. And that does have a certain amount of value to a consumer. And plus, remember, both credentials have that code of ethics as well. So that offers a certain amount of protection. And even for my day job, I am required to maintain at least one credential. It's kind of considered a reflection on the department that its researchers have been tested and have demonstrated quality work. So if you find yourself in a position of needing help, how do you go about finding a credentialed professional? And fortunately, we've looked at two great websites and they don't let us down on this end either. BCG's directory of certified genealogists is available right off their homepage by selecting Find a Certified Genealogist. And once you get the directory pulled up, you can search by name, you can search by physical location address, education, geographic or research specialty, available services, language. You can also search for other BCG credentials like the Certified Genealogical Lecturer. That's an add-on that you can obtain, you can apply for once you have your CG credential. Now for ICAPGen, their directory is also available right off their webpage. You just select Find a Professional, comes right up. And here you can see you can search by name, you can search by region of accreditation or place of residence. And they also give you a little search box up there in the corner so you can drill down a little bit more in your search if you need to. And that's about it. As I mentioned to you before, if you are interested in either of these credentials, the first place you're gonna wanna go is to the websites and download those application guides. That's really the best place to start. From there, take advantage of the wealth of information that's available on both the ICAPGen website and the BCG website as well. And don't forget about published articles to kind of help you see where you might fall in things. Are you ready to submit? If not, you can take a look at your education and see if you can identify any weak areas or gaps in your education or experience, and then try and focus on building those spots up. And I'm sure this has probably been way more than you can take in at one time about both processes, but hopefully at least there's a better understanding of the two, a better understanding of the credentialing processes and what you would be expected to do to earn a credential. So if anyone has any questions, I can try and answer them.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that
Sure.
terrific overview of
Oh, good.
both organizations. There are a couple questions.
Okay.
The first from Susan Bonita Priest. Do you have to retest to recertify?
To recertify, so once you, okay, so you're asking if once once you've received the CG and you have to go through your renewal, do you have to retest? Um, I don't know that I would call it a retest. Both AG and CG require you to submit either some form of work sample, and they're different depending on the two credentials. Unless for the AG, and I just discovered this recently, has a stipulation in their renewal guidelines that says if you are something about if you're a full-time researcher, um, you just submit your work experience along with, what you've been doing over the past 5 years, something like that. So for me, it looks like I don't have to turn in a work sample to AG to ICAPGen to renew my AG in 4 years, 5 years.
Mhm.
Um, so that's pretty exciting. But if you're not one of those lucky people where this is your everyday day job, yes. And same as you would in the initial testing, be sure to look at the guidelines for that.
Mhm.
But it's
Oh,
certainly not like the big components, like the BCG portfolio. You don't have to do that.
right.
It's like a work sample. If you publish an article, you can submit that for
Mhm.
BCG, and that satisfies that.
Great. Um, we had a viewer, Kathy Nixon, leave a comment that she may have a case study if anyone is looking for one, which that could be helpful.
Be careful with that, though.
Or,
One of the guidelines for BCG is that your work cannot have been, you can't collaborate with anybody
mhm.
in one of your work samples, for instance. Very basic proofreading somebody else can look at, but for the most part, kind of keep those to yourself. So you can get your case study possibility from someone else. To be on the safe side, you wouldn't want that person to have started any work on it already. You don't
Right.
want them dipping into your stuff. This is supposed to be all your
Mhm.
work. So be very careful about that.
Okay. And kind of along those lines, we had a question from Mary Brown Fuller. Is it okay to use the same research for both, or is that considered bad form?
For both AG and CG.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we get into a similar area here. For the AG, my experience was that I did not receive any feedback on my work samples during the process. So if you pass, they don't really have anything to say, you just progress. But I know people that have submitted their AG work samples, and if they didn't pass with that 90% or higher, they would get judges' comments back, feedback,
Mm-hmm.
and that getting those comments, I think conflicts a little bit with the BCG guidelines of having it be your own work.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a problem. It might depend on the situation. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I tend to be a little overcautious. I don't want anyone to have any questions about whether I follow the rules or not. So I would probably not do that just to be on the super duper safe side,
Mm-hmm.
for that reason.
Yeah. Um, let's see. I don't think there were any other questions. I just wanted to put it out there that I'm in the process of going through the AG credentialing journey.
And you passed level 1.
Yes, I have passed level 1, and
Yay!
I'm in a study group for level 2 and 3.
Hmm.
And one thing that is just extremely helpful is with these study groups, you can receive peer feedback
Yep.
on your work.
Yeah,
That's invaluable, absolutely invaluable.
it is.
Oh, and one other thing, if you're looking for an idea for a case study that has conflicting evidence or indirect evidence, I work in a museum with a genealogy library, and weekly I have people contacting me with questions about their ancestry. Um, and that, I think volunteering for an organization such as that really helps open up your view past your family
Oh, yeah.
and explore different record sets and different areas or counties surrounding you or even states.
Right.
Um, I'm testing in the Great Lakes region also, and I'm building my resource guide. And I'm actually started with Illinois and Michigan. I'm
Hmm.
doing the states that I don't know
Uh-huh.
too much about. So
Yeah.
saving Indiana for last.
Right.
But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and it's great that you're going to continue to build on that resource guide because when I
mhm,
took my level 2 test, I had that my research guide that I started in the level 2 study group and continued to build on. I had that with me on a flash drive and just
mhm,
popped it in during my test. And I don't think I may have opened it. I don't think I really looked at it because I was
mhm.
kind of like, ah,
Yeah.
it was great just knowing that I had that research guide that I had worked on in, in the study group and beyond. It's
Mhm.
it's a relief to know that you have all of those
Right.
answers when you need them.
And you can use them later.
Yeah, exactly.
We did have a question. Are there fees for these processes and are they available to be seen online?
Yes, they both do. For ICAPGen, there's a fee at every level. They also have an additional fee for custom testing, but I live in Maryland right now, and not having to fly all the way to Utah to take my test
Mhm.
and get a hotel and plane tickets and plan out a long weekend trip like that. It was worth it to me to pay. I think it was like $100 or $150 for custom testing, but I was still saving money because I didn't have to go all the way to Utah. So other times, other people, might think, well, yeah, I want to go to the Family Search Library anyway. I could do all
Mhm.
my work and all. So it's a
Right.
give and take what you
Mhm.
choose to do, but you have the freedom to do that. BCG, you pay your fee when you submit that preliminary application. And then there are also renewal fees, but you
Mhm.
only renewal every 5 years.
Right.
So it's not that much.
Let's see. Doreen Goslin asked, is taking a writing class recommended before starting the projects for the processes?
Absolutely. And I'm in a writing group now with a few other people. And we meet every month. We meet, pick a week out of every month and we meet for 45 minutes to an hour and talk about what we're doing, what our projects are, what our writing projects are. It's great and they've all published something somewhere. So it's really good to just show, even if you're struggling, well, I've got this, I'm trying to say this, and you can just kind of hash out a
Mhm.
portion, or they'll read over your entire case study for you before you submit it.
Mhm.
Um, there are a lot of people who have joined writing groups, and
Mhm.
one good way to meet people to form those groups would be those ProGen study groups, if
Mhm.
y'all are familiar with those. Um, a lot of times, because the ProGen study groups are so long lasting, they last over, wait, I think we went back to 12 months now. For a while, it was 18 months, but I think it's 12 months now.
Mhm.
Either way, it's a really long time where you meet once a
Mhm.
month. And so you get to know the people in your group really well. There are writing assignments as well for ProGen. So you
Mhm.
already are in the habit of giving and receiving feedback,
Right.
especially on writing samples.
Mhm.
And a lot of people just decide to continue working with those people
Mhm.
after all. So
Yeah.
that's a good way to get
Mhm.
people to do that with.
Yep. Kathy Nixon did post about her case study idea, if anyone's interested. Um, which certification, this is from Hazel Thornton, which certification is considered more prestigious professionally in terms of how much you can charge clients?
Well, first of all, remember there's one certification, that's BCG's, and then accreditation, through ICAPGen, so they are separate credentials. As far as prestige, uh, yeah, they're like I said before, they both kind of just show that you've gone through the process. You've had your work judged.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the credentials, that work has been assessed to meet standards or, a certain level, reach a certain level of competency. ICAPGen does have their own rubrics.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit different than BCG's, but it's the same concept.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, as far as what you can charge clients, that's a larger issue. That's not strictly about having a credential or not. When you're talking about fees, you're gonna want to look at the market, look at the people that would be your competitors. How much are they charging? Are they getting clients at the rates that they're charging? Do those people hold a credential? How long have they been researching? There are a lot of people out there that don't have credentials, but they've got great reputation. And that they've got happy clients because I get them all the time. They've been referred to me after they've been to
Mm-hmm.
some of these people. So it really just depends. If you're thinking about rates and whether earning a credential is worthwhile to you, take a large look at the market in your area and in your field. I mean, that's the other thing. If you've got a research specialty that's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily in line with your, geographic market,
Mm-hmm.
that's something else to consider. You might be the
Exactly.
only person that's, that deals with like Vincennes,
Mm-hmm.
colonial Vincennes or something, and you're
Right.
over in, I don't know, Jay County or something.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the only one that does that kind of work, you're already in a pretty good position,
Mm-hmm.
as long as there's a market for it.
Exactly.
So,
Um, let's see. I did want to introduce John Marie Pearson. She's on
Little
here with us.
technical difficulty, but I'm finally here.
Glad to see you. Did you have any questions?
No, I think you pretty much got them all.
Excellent. Well, that was a terrific presentation.
oh, good.
I love the overview of both organizations. They have
Great information
a
on both.
lot to
It's a
offer.
lot. I'm hoping everybody's still awake. It was a lot of information.
Um, there have been thank yous and likes and
Good.
a great crowd.
Great.
And before we go, later tonight or tomorrow, I will put this on our YouTube channel for
Great.
folks who don't do Facebook. So,
Great.
if there's anything else, oh, lots of hearts. I'm watching my phone.
And November 7th for the Facebook Live, we're going to be talking about holiday gift ideas. And we are looking for some people that might want to be guests on there for maybe 5 or 10 minutes to talk about their gifts ideas that they've done. We're just trying to get a jump start on the holiday season. So just send us a DM or whatever if you've had an idea and you want to share it.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and end this live, and we will see you next month.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.